The lake shimmered like liquid silver under the Minnesota sun, its ripples whispering secrets to the pines that lined the shore. In the small lakeside town of Willow Creek, where winters stretched endlessly and every face was familiar, 8-year-old Abigail Harper stood on the dock, clutching a fishing rod. Her chestnut braids swung as she cast the line, her father, Daniel, chuckling beside her. "Aim for the stars, Abby," he'd say, his voice warm as the summer air. Daniel, a high school physics teacher, had a knack for turning every moment into a lesson about the universe. Abigail's mother, Ellen, a night shift nurse at the county hospital, would join them on the porch later, her tired eyes softening as they shared vanilla ice cream from the town's only diner. In those moments, Abigail felt like the center of their world, wrapped in the kind of love that made her believe families were forever. But forever shattered on a frigid January night, just after Abigail's 8th birthday. She woke to headlights slicing through her bedroom window and urgent knocking at the door. Her aunt, Margaret, burst in, face pale as snow. "Abby, grab your coat. Your mom's at the hospital." Abigail's baby sister, Sophie, had arrived 2 months early, a fragile wisp of life tethered to tubes in an incubator. Standing in the sterile hospital corridor, Abigail watched her mother's gaze lock onto Sophie's heart monitor, her father's hand gripping Ellen's like a lifeline. At 8, Abigail couldn't grasp the medical terms premature respiratory distress, but she felt the shift. The warmth of her family's orbit had tilted and she was no longer its son. When Sophie came home, the Harper house transformed into a fortress of caution. Bleach stung the air purifiers hummed relentlessly, and hand sanitizer sat on every surface. Sophie, the miracle baby, became the axis around which everything spun. If Abigail so much as coughed, Ellen would bundle her off to her grandmother Ruth's house a few blocks away. At first, Abigail loved these visits. Ruth baked apple pies that perfumed the air and let Abigail rummage through her collection of antique brooches, each with a story of its own. But the trips grew frequent, and Abigail began to see the truth. She wasn't just a guest at home, she was a threat. Her presence, her very breath, could endanger Sophie. "We can't risk her getting sick," Ellen would say, her voice flat, eyes never meeting Abigail's. The neglect crept in quietly, like frost on a window pane. In 3rd grade, Abigail brought home a perfect math test, imagining it pinned proudly on the fridge. Ellen glanced at it, then turned to Daniel. "Did you pick up tissues?" "Sophie's nose is runny," Daniel nodded, tossing Abigail a distracted "good job, kid," without looking up. When she won 1st place at the school science fair, Ellen was absent, tending to Sophie's mild fever. Abigail's drawings, her stories, her eager chatter about books all were met with the same refrain: "Sophie needs rest. Abby, please, be quiet." She learned to swallow her disappointment, to shrink herself into corners where she wouldn't disturb the delicate balance of her sister's world. By 10, Abigail had mastered the art of being invisible. Her bedroom became her sanctuary, scented with peppermint, all a smell Sophie couldn't tolerate, ensuring the space remained Abigail's alone. There, she lost herself in books about art history, poring over images of Renaissance paintings and Victorian jewelry. Ruth's antique collection fueled her obsession, especially a swan-shaped hairpin with pale amethyst stones that caught the light like a secret. Holding it, Abigail felt a spark of something she couldn't name, a hunger to uncover beauty hidden in forgotten things. At 13, Abigail decided she'd forge her own path. She marched into Maple Sugar Bakery, the town's cozy hub of buttery aromas and Ginger Snap crumbs, and asked for a job. The owner, Mrs. Dolores Carter, a woman with kind eyes and flour-dusted aprons, didn't question why a teenager wanted to scrub counters. She placed a hand on Abigail's shoulder and said, "Work hard and you'll carve out your place in this world." Those words became Abigail's anchor. After school, she tied her hair back, wiped tables, and took orders, saving every penny. At home, no one noticed her absence or the faint scent of dish soap clinging to her clothes, as long as she didn't trigger Sophie's allergies. Abigail didn't mind. She was building something no one could take away. Her quiet rebellion culminated in high school. While Sophie's every milestone, a school play, a choir recital, was celebrated with flowers and camcorders, Abigail's achievements went unnoticed. A perfect SAT score earned a mumbled "that's nice" from Ellen, who was slicing oranges for Sophie's vitamin C intake. But Abigail didn't falter. She spent her bakery breaks writing college essays, researching scholarships, and navigating FAFSA alone. Mrs. Carter proofread her applications, teaching her to write from the soul. When the acceptance letter from Northwestern University arrived, offering a full-ride scholarship for art history, Abigail stood behind the bakery counter. Tears blurring her vision, Mrs. Carter hugged her fiercely, whispering, "You did this, Abby." At home, she showed the letter to Ellen, who set it aside with a curt, "Congrats, but don't tell Sophie." She stressed. Abigail folded the letter, tucked it into her pocket, and climbed the stairs to her room, her resolve hardening like steel. After graduating with honors, Abigail moved to Chicago, diving into an unpaid internship at a small jewelry appraisal firm. The work was meticulous, donning white gloves, examining scratches on old rings under a magnifying glass, but Abigail thrived. Her intuition was uncanny. One day, she picked up a brooch listed as worthless costume jewelry. Its delicate engravings and faint maker's mark felt alive in her hands. She spent nights researching, cross-referencing archives, and even enlisted a college friend to access museum records. The brooch, it turned out, was a rare piece by a French artisan who crafted for nobility before his workshop burned in the war. Reappraised at $12,000, it sold at auction for over $40,000. The firm's email praised her. Abigail has a rare eye. Soon, misjudged pieces seemed to find her: a cloisonne necklace by a Russian artist, a platinum ring from a historic Boston family, each discovery cementing her reputation. At 27, Abigail founded Orem and Iris, named for gold and the irises Ellen once grew in their yard before Sophie's needs consumed everything. Starting in a cramped Milwaukee office with a wobbly desk and a second-hand lamp, Abigail poured her soul into the business. Her meticulous appraisals and passion for uncovering hidden gems drew clients from pawnshops to private collectors. Within 5 years, Orem and Iris expanded to 3 offices: Milwaukee, Minneapolis, and Denver, serving museums, estate lawyers, and international auction houses. Abigail's net worth soared past $12 million, yet she lived modestly, driving a silver SUV and using an outdated phone. She didn't need flash to prove her worth. Her family, meanwhile, remained oblivious. They assumed she was scraping by, tinkering with old junk, while they doted on Sophie, who flitted between college majors and flaunted designer bags. Abigail secretly sent $7,000 a month to her parents, covering Sophie's tuition and lavish lifestyle. She attended Sunday dinners, enduring Sophie's snide remarks and Ellen's indifference, never revealing her success. To them, she was still the quiet daughter who didn't cause trouble. But Abigail wasn't invisible anymore, not to herself. She was a diamond, honed by years of being overlooked, ready to shine when the time was right. End of chapter 1. Abigail stood outside her Milwaukee office, the Orem and Iris sign glinting in the dusk. Her heart was heavy but resolute. She'd come far from the girl who faded into the background of her own home, but the journey to claim her light was just beginning. And no matter who saw her, Abigail knew she'd never dim herself again. In the quiet hum of Willow Creek, Minnesota, Abigail Harper moved through her family's world like a ghost, seen but never truly noticed. At 27, she was the invisible daughter, her staggering success as the CEO of Orem and Iris, a multi-million-dollar antique jewelry appraisal empire, hidden beneath the assumption that she was just tinkering with old trinkets. Her parents, Daniel and Ellen, and her younger sister, Sophie, lived in a bubble of their own making, oblivious to Abigail's achievements. While Abigail's net worth climbed past $12 million, her family still pictured her scraping by, perhaps sorting dusty baubles in a backroom somewhere. They poured their attention into Sophie, the miracle child who flitted between college majors: art history, psychology, now interior design, funded by the $7,000 Abigail secretly wired to her parents each month. Sophie's Instagram glittered with designer bags and tropical getaways, captioned with hashtags like #blessed and #hard work pays off, while Abigail sat silently at Sunday dinners, her own life a locked vault. Abigail endured it all: the snide remarks, the indifference, with a stoic grace. At those weekly gatherings, held in the same wood-paneled dining room where she once ate ice cream as a child, Sophie dominated the conversation. "I'm thinking Milan for spring break," she'd say, twirling a lock of blonde hair, while Ellen beamed and Daniel nodded, never questioning how a student afforded such extravagance. If Abigail mentioned her work carefully vague, like "I authenticated a vintage piece last week," Sophie would smirk. "Oh, Abby, still playing with Grandma's jewelry box?" Ellen would change the subject to Sophie's latest whim, and Daniel would ask Abigail to pass the mashed potatoes. She'd smile, pour herself orange juice, and let the moment pass. Her success wasn't a secret out of shame. It was a shield, protecting the life she'd built from the family who'd never valued her. But the shield cracked on Thanksgiving, in a moment that would redraw the lines of Abigail's life. Tired of the usual dry turkey and lumpy gravy, Abigail decided to host the holiday herself, pulling out all the stops. She hired a Chicago-based catering service, the same one her company used for high-stakes auction galas, known for turning meals into art. The team arrived at the Harper house with portable ovens, silver trays, and a tablescape designer who arranged crystal goblets and linen napkins with surgical precision. The menu was a masterpiece: herb-crusted rack of lamb, truffle-infused risotto, and a cranberry tart with gold leaf accents. Nearly 20 relatives filled the dining room: grandparents, aunts, uncles, and Sophie's new boyfriend, a finance bro named Tyler, gasping at the spread. "Abby, this is excessive," Sophie whispered to Ellen, her tone laced with suspicion. "Who's she trying to impress?" Abigail just smiled, pouring wine, her silence louder than any retort. As the meal unfolded, Abigail slipped upstairs to her old bedroom, now a guest room cluttered with Sophie's old dance trophies. A live auction in Tokyo demanded her attention. A client was bidding on a rare Meiji-era sapphire set, and Abigail needed to monitor the authentication process. She opened her laptop, the screen glowing with real-time data: her company's internal dashboard, a pending $400,000 contract, and her business account balance of $12.6 million. Her Bluetooth headset buzzed with updates from her assistant in Denver. She was deep in focus when Sophie barged in, unannounced. "Abby, got an iPhone charger?" "Mine's dead." Before Abigail could respond, Sophie's eyes locked onto the laptop screen. Her jaw tightened, a smirk curling her lips. "Oh, this is too good. Let's show everyone what our little antique nerd's up to on Thanksgiving." Before Abigail could stop her, Sophie snatched the laptop and strode downstairs, heels clicking on the hardwood. "Guys, you have to see this," she announced, spinning the screen toward the dining table. The room fell silent, forks hovering midair. The glowing figures: $12.6 million, $400,000, Orem and Iris's quarterly earnings of $4 million stared back like an accusation. Aunt Margaret's wineglass tilted, nearly spilling. Tyler let out a low whistle. Ellen broke the stillness with a nervous laugh. "Abby, what's this? You're helping someone with paperwork, right, sweetheart?" Her voice was thin, pleading. Abigail stood at the staircase's base, heart pounding but steady. She straightened her sweater, stepped into the room center, and spoke, her voice clear as cut glass. "No, Mom, that's mine. I'm the CEO of Orem and Iris. We authenticate antique jewelry and estate assets, with offices in Milwaukee, Minneapolis, and Denver. Everything you see is real." The air thickened. Uncle Ted dropped his spoon. Daniel's face flushed, sweat beading on his forehead. Sophie gripped the table, her voice cracking. You have that kind of money and didn't say anything?" "Mom and Dad are drowning in debt for me. I'm still in school." Abigail's gaze didn't waver. "I've been sending you and Dad $7,000 every month for 2 years. You never asked where it came from." Ellen's face drained of color. Daniel slammed his fist on the table, his teacher's calm shattered. "That's enough, Abigail. You're still our daughter, family's share. You should be ashamed hiding this from us." Sophie's eyes brimmed with tears, her voice rising to a shriek. "I had a right to know. I'm your sister. You watched us struggle while you sat on millions?" Abigail's laugh was sharp, cutting through the chaos. "Struggle? Sophie, you fly business class, wear a Cartier watch, and just bought a $90,000 BMW. That's not struggling." She turned to Ellen, her tone softening but firm. "Do you remember my perfect SAT score, my full scholarship to Northwestern? My graduation when no one came because Sophie had a preschool ballet recital? I stopped being a priority the day she was born. Every award, every moment I made you proud, it was erased because Sophie needs rest. And now, the second you see I've built something, you're angry I didn't hand it over." Ellen's hands trembled, her lips parting but silent. Sophie's voice shook with betrayal. "You didn't trust me, Abby. You never did." Abigail met her sister's eyes. "You've never trusted me. You mocked my work to your friends, told them I live off Mom and Dad's scraps. But I'm the one who paid for your semesters, your vacations, that sale bag you bragged about." Sophie froze, her defiance crumbling. Ellen's voice quavered. "Abby, we need help. Sophie wants to start an interior design firm. You could set up a fund." Abigail cut her off, pulling out her phone. With a few taps, she opened her banking app and canceled the monthly transfers. The room erupted. Ellen screamed, "You can't do this. We were counting on that money." Sophie sobbed, "You're ruining everything." Daniel stood, his voice booming. "No matter what you've done, you're still part of this family. You owe us." Abigail set her glass down, the clink echoing. "Family doesn't mean carrying people who belittle you. I've been on my own since I was 17. If I can do it, so can you." She closed the laptop, slipped it under her arm, and walked to the door. Whispers of lawyers and "she regret this" trailed her, but Abigail didn't look back. The heavy oak door shut behind her, and for the first time, the weight on her shoulders lifted. Outside, the November air was crisp, the lake's surface still under a starless sky. Abigail drove back to her Milwaukee apartment, her phone buzzing with texts she didn't read. She wasn't running from her family, she was running toward herself. End of chapter 2. Abigail stood in her quiet apartment, the glow of her desk lamp casting shadows on the swan hairpin her grandmother Ruth had given her years ago. The fight wasn't over, her family's anger would follow her, but for now, she'd claimed her truth. And no amount of guilt could dim the light she'd fought so hard to ignite. The fallout from Thanksgiving hit Abigail Harper like a Minnesota blizzard, relentless and cold. Her phone buzzed incessantly with texts from her mother Ellen. "Abby, you're tearing us apart." Sophie's heartbroken. Her father, Daniel, sent curt messages. "This isn't who we raised you to be." Sophie's texts were venomous. "You'll regret this." "Abby, you're no sister." Emails flooded her company inbox from distant relatives, even her father's friend's wife, who once called Abigail sweet but unremarkable. The messages ranged from guilt trips to veiled threats, all demanding a piece of the $12.6 million fortune they'd glimpsed. Abigail didn't flinch. She hired Marcus Reed, a sharp-eyed attorney who'd handled estate disputes for her VIP clients. Marcus drafted cease and desist letters, each with a line Abigail insisted on. "Love, if it exists, doesn't come with a bill." Sophie took to social media, posting a tearful rant. "Some people hoard wealth while their family suffers." She shared old photos Abigail as a baby in her arms, at her high school graduation caption to paint Abigail as a heartless mogul. Comments split between outrage, "What a selfish sister," and skepticism, "Why's a student posting from Cabo?" Abigail scrolled past without replying, her silence a fortress. The only family tie she kept was with her grandmother, Ruth, who, over a crackling phone call, said, "Abby, you've outgrown their shadows. Fly free." Ruth's words were a bomb, grounding Abigail as she rebuilt her life. In early March, Abigail moved to a mid-century villa in Madison, Wisconsin, overlooking Lake Mendota. The house was understated but secure, with AI surveillance and a bank-grade jewelry vault. She furnished her office with a leather chair, a mahogany bookshelf, and an amber lamp that glowed like her resolve. Abigail changed her phone number, scrubbed her personal details from company systems, and instructed her receptionist to bar unverified family visitors. Her company, Aurum and Iris, soared new contracts with a New York fashion designer and a European museum, plus a Denver office expansion. Clients admired her discretion, some trusting her more after Sophie's public stunt. One morning, sipping tea by her lakeview window, Abigail watched Ruth water irises in the garden. Over gemstones that evening, Ruth said, "I'm proud you stayed true, even when it cost you." Abigail smiled, clutching the amethyst swan hairpin Ruth gave her at 15, a symbol of her journey from invisible to radiant. She placed it in a velvet box with a note, "For the girl unseen, you became a light no one expected." It sat on her gallery shelf, a quiet vow to never dim again. Abigail stood in her villa, the lake's mist curling outside. Her family's silence wasn't peace but reluctance, yet it didn't matter. She'd proven her worth to the only judge who counted, herself, and that was freedom.